there's a pretty good chance that you'll get a TV series in the States called The Warriors, in which you use, what, the martial arts
well,
in a Western setting?
That was the original idea.
In the late 60s, my father was being considered for a lead role in a TV series about a martial artist. He was passed up because it was believed that a Chinese man could not be a lead.
It's a television deal. It's called Kung Fu, and I was supposed to do it. Yeah. But the network decided against it.
Bruce Lee had an accent, and he was as cool as anything gets, but I think the suits of that time would not have been comfortable with putting a young Asian American lead on the air.
Business-wise, it's a risk. And I don't blame them, I mean, in the same way, it's like in Hong Kong, if a foreigner come and became a star, if I were the man with the money, I probably would have my own worry of whether or not the acceptance would be there.
And so he decided to write his own show.
Bruce Lee thought it was time in America to have a television show about Kung Fu. So he had this notion of a show set in America where a Chinese man comes to America in search of his sister and ends up that fish out of water story about a Kung Fu prodigy.
It was obviously a martial arts vehicle for him to star in, and ultimately The Warrior is what it was going to be called.
Let me ask you, however, about the problems that you face as a Chinese hero in an American series. Have people come up in the industry and said, well, we don't know how the audience are going to take a non-American?
Such question has been raised. In fact, it is being discussed, and that is why The Warrior is not going to be on.
It was a big disappointment for him. He was sort of struggling to be accepted in Hollywood and to be able to make that mark that he really wanted to make.
You look at all the television series, right? I mean, all of them are gimmicks. That's shallowly treated. It's all fast money.
I had heard the urban myth that Bruce Lee had an idea of doing a Western, and that always kind of stuck with me.
This treatment and the fact that my father had written this show was always sort of part of the Bruce Lee lore, and people who know a bit about Bruce Lee have heard about this, and Justin was definitely one of those people. And we got together, I showed him the drafts of the treatment and the drawings and all those things.
It was amazing to kind of have experience and heard of the myth, but finally had the typed papers in my hand.
He had pages of character drawings, he had colorful images, he had notes on score. He has a little moment where he took out a pencil, a color pencil, and wrote all over one word, colorful. He like literally changed the word. Just really great. There was so much life in it.
He's so prolific. There's the 8 pages, but then there's the room full of boxes of writing. And he was relentless in trying to figure things out and developing philosophies. And I knew at that point that if we could build it right, it was to really honor the spirit of what he was trying to do.
As a person, one thing that I have definitely learned, and my life is a life of self-examination and self-peeling of myself bit by bit, day by day.
He was very interested in the Chinese experience. So he was looking at a time frame for this show that took place in the late 19th century in San Francisco's Chinatown community. He was very directed and very focused about his intention to show an authentic representation of a Chinese person.
At the time when he was writing it, those ideas were so ahead of its time. And I think we wanted to kind of celebrate and embrace that.
Things of Chinese will be quite interesting for the next few years. I mean, not that I'm politically, inclining toward anything.
No, I understand that. I'm just wondering.
But I mean, once the opening of China, that it will bring more understanding.
Yeah.
More things that are, like different, and maybe in the contrast of comparison, some new thing might grow. So therefore, it's a very rich period to be in.
Though it's like 40 years later, we wanted to make sure the spirit of what he was doing was captured and that the process also kind of mirrors what he was trying to do.
My father died when I was 4, so I was very young. But I am so grateful for the fact that he was such an expressive human being. I have all of these writings and interviews and footage and things that really give me a glimpse into who he was as a human being, what his process was, what he thought, what he believed. I'm so thrilled to see this show come to fruition, and to be able to honor my father and his legacy in this way is more meaningful than there are words to say.